So the Hamming distance between u and v is the Hamming weight of u plus v, where this plus here is modulo 2 addition. According to this, the minimum distance of a code, super important parameter. So the minimum distance is the Hamming distance between two code words, two different code words. And if we look at all possible pairs, those who lie closest to each other defines the minimum distance. With the minimum distance, we can say many things. If C is the transmitted code word, then the received pattern is C also plus an error pattern, and plus here is modulo 2 addition. So E here, the error pattern has ones in the position where errors have occurred and zeros where errors have not occurred. So the weight of the error pattern is the number of errors that have occurred during transmission. The receiver declares that no errors have occurred if the received pattern is a code word. Okay. So for error detection, what we do, we look at Y. Is Y a code word? Then we say no errors have occurred. If Y is not a code word, we say errors have occurred. For a code with minimum distance dmin, all error patterns with weight less than the minimum distance are guaranteed to be detectable. So that's why we want to have a large minimum distance, because then we can correct all patterns which has 1 error, 2 errors, 3 errors, etc. up to dmin. Okay? And those errors are typically the most likely to occur also. If C is the code word, then we can say that an error pattern is detectable, that is, we will find it if C plus E is not a code word. Okay, so that's basically rephrasing what I said earlier. So if this is true, that E is detectable, okay, and this needs to be true, this relation needs to be true for all the C's in the code word, because it has to hold for all possible transmitted code words also. Now, so we can detect, typically when we have a code, there are certain error patterns that we know are correctable. And these are the ones which has weight less than dmin. However, we're also able to detect many more than these. But not all of them. So good code has a large minimum distance, high rate, low encoding and error detecting complexity, and the ability to detect likely error patterns. Okay, so this is what we're looking for. So codes that are in common use are single-to parity check codes. It's very low complexity, but not very good. We have the internet checksums, fairly low complexity, but not super good. Then we have the CRCs, high complexity relative, but also very good. Okay. So, depending on the need, we either choose a parity check code, internet checksum, or CRC, or any other of the gazillion different variations of error detection codes there are. Okay. This is nice to know. So these error detection codes are used in ARQ protocols. So ARQ protocols is done to refine a service. Okay. So an ARQ protocol at a certain layer is to provide a nice service to the layer above it. What do we want to do? We want to deliver packets in order, without errors, without duplications. So that's what we want to do, even though that the layer below us introduces errors. So the basic elements of ARQ is to have an error detecting code, sequence numbers in order to keep track of everything, to be able to avoid duplications, and to deliver packets in order. We need acknowledgements from the receiver that things have gone right. And we also need some timeout in order to figure out that the transmitter decided that something has gone wrong. Basic protocols like this, we have a transmitter, has a send window size. So we accept service data units from the layer above it. We put them into the send window until the send window is full. Then we block the upper layer. As soon as we put it in the send window, we also transmit them. And then we start a timeout counter. And then if an acknowledgement is received, then we, for a certain service data unit in that send window, we can remove it from the send window or forget it because we know it's been received error-free at the receiving end. If it expires, then we retransmit that frame according to some rules. Receiver, we have also buffer, receive window of a certain number of frames, and then a buffer error-free frames with the correct sequence number in this receive window until it can start to deliver them. And it can deliver them when the service data units are in sequence. Okay, and if so, it can remove that buffer space. It's called sliding the window. And then transmit the ACK frames. It needs to do that also. So stop and wait. We have a send window, a receive window, which is size 1. Go back in. We have a send window, which is larger than 1. A receive window, which is 1. Select the repeat. We have both of these buffers, send windows and receive window, larger than 1 frame. Okay, and let's see. Of course, it's like this. Stop and wait is the simplest, but also the least efficient under certain circumstances. Go back in is a little bit more efficient, but also more complex. Select the repeat is the most complex, but also the highest performing things under certain circumstances. It has to do with the normalized delay bandwidth product, and also has to do with the likelihood of errors. You'll find all that in the slides. Okay, medium access control is how to coordinate access to a common medium, for instance, a radio channel or a shared cable. MAC protocols determine how to share this, and they can be divided into different variations. We have static channelization, where we use the same resource on the channel, and we assign that to a user for long-time use. Think TV broadcast or radio broadcast here. Okay, so P3 is on the same frequency now and tomorrow, day after that, and so forth. Or dynamic MAC, where we assign resources on demand. So if somebody has something to say, they get resources. If they don't have resources. Okay. Dynamic MACs could be either scheduled access or random access. Random access, we have, for instance, ALOA, slotted ALOA. So basically it's like this. We transmit the frame, start a timeout counter, we wait for an ACK. If the timeout expires, we back off and transmit again. Very similar to an ARQ protocol. Okay, I didn't have any, oops. Here we go. I didn't have any examples of scheduled ones, but these are the reservation protocols and so forth. Delay bandwidth product is key here. So coordination is by sharing the medium. So the difficulty of coordination then increases with the delay bandwidth product. So delays are not good typically, and the bad thing is that bandwidth here is in the meaning of data rate, bits per second. So if we increase the number of bits per second in the layer below us, we actually have harder time coordinating. So that's unfortunate, but a fact. Carrier sense multiple access is the very often used medium access method. So it's basically a listen before you talk protocol. So main idea is to listen to the channel, sense the channel. If there is no activity, that is, if the channel is idle, we transmit. If it's busy, we wait for according to some rules. There are 3 main categories: persistent, non-persistent, and p-persistent. In the way it's backing off. I'll let you read the details later on. I'm not going to go through them here. CSMA works well for low bandwidth products, but it's worse than ALOA for sufficiently large delay bandwidth products. So ALOA is still useful in some context. Collision detection idea is that when we start a transmission, we monitor the medium for collisions. If a collision is detected, we abort the transmission. Okay. And collisions are therefore made short in time, and that gives better throughput. So this collision detection, we use that when we can, and typically we can do that when the transmit power and the receive power are not so different. Okay. So that works well on cable systems and so forth, but it does not work for wireless. For wireless, the transmit power and the receive power, it could be a factor of 10 to the 10 difference in power. More than a billion, factor of a billion difference. Okay. So that's why it's not so used. It's not used in wireless at the moment, at least. Reservation protocols is that we transmit organized in cycles, possibly in different lengths. So we have a reservation interval where we coordinate access, and then we access the channel. So we have control where we agree upon in which order to transmit and how much and so forth. And then we have a period where we actually transmit data. And that together is called the cycle. Polling is another variation of reservation of these scheduled medium access controls, and that's basically that we have a polling message which is sent to users. So one asks users if they have data to transmit. If they do, they're allowed to transmit. We can do that either with a centralized entity or a distributed one. Channel resources is basically time and frequency space. So we can do channelization, and that's to split the channel resources in time or in frequency or in some other way. So time division is to split time into time slots and hand out the slots between the users. Frequency division, split the system bandwidth into frequency channels and then hand out frequency channels. Code division is using different waveforms that are close to orthogonal to each other. And thereby users can actually transmit them at the same time, and they can be separated at the receiver. Security, so this is the new part. We have three things that we would like that we talked about. Confidentiality, integrity, and authenticity. These are three properties that we would like to provide. So confidentiality is to keep the message or the plain text secret to outsiders. So if we have Alice and Bob, they want to communicate, then nobody else should be able to figure out what they do, not a single bit of the message. So that's confidentiality. Integrity is to prevent tampering of messages that are in transition. So when Alice is transmitting a message, there might be an evil person, Trudy, that modifies the message. Then Bob, the receiver, should be able to detect this. Okay, so there is not possible to forge messages or change them. Authenticity means that Bob, who's the receiver, can be sure that the message he receives is from Alice. So he knows that he's talking to the right person and not an impersonator. These things can be done, provided using cryptographic methods. So there are two families, symmetric ones or private key cryptography, which means that the same key is used at both ends. Okay, so Alice and Bob have a shared key, the same key. Asymmetric is public key cryptography. Then public key is used at one end and the secret key at the other end. So Alice has a secret key and a public key. The public key is known to Bob. So when Bob wants to communicate with Alice, Bob is using Alice's public key for encryption. Alice, on the other hand, is decrypting this message using her secret key. That's only her. She is the only person that can decrypt messages, but anybody can encrypt messages to her. That's an instance of this public key cryptography. Asymmetric cryptography is more computationally demanding than symmetric one. So that's the drawback of asymmetric. However, the positive side with asymmetric cryptography is the key distribution. I mean, how to share the keys from the beginning. It's easier in the asymmetric setting than in the symmetric ones. this does not make sense. I will change that for the PDF that I put up online. So it's like this. Key distribution is easier in asymmetric than in symmetric crypto. Okay. So that's it. That's the course in a nutshell. You look extremely excited. It's Friday afternoon. But it's been fun. And remember that this is only scratching the surface, right? There are many, many cool things that still to be discovered. And that could be done in, for instance, in different types of master programs. So if one is interested in communications, there are several ones one can go into. I would say that communication is used in any engineering discipline now, in one way or another. But if one wants to go more into the actual technologies and so forth, one way to look at that is to look at the protocol stack and then say, okay, if one is more interested in the higher layer issues like application layer and transport layers and so forth, there is a master program that deals with this, which is on higher abstraction level. So if one would say that this is more computer engineering style than electrical engineering. If one is more interested in the lower layers here, there's this MPCOM, which is typically electrical engineering, although computer engineering students and other students for sure can follow this one. If one is hardcore electrical engineering and wants to do only that, or into devices and things like that, the physics of things, then there is this program that deals with more components, the actual hardware. There is more like algorithms and methods and not so much hardware. Here's more hardware. And then if one is interested in the digital design of hardware, so then this is digital hardware and this is more analog hardware. So this is one way of slicing up the master programs here. I know most about this because this is where I used to teach and people in my group teach and so forth. So when it comes to that, it's basically, yeah, communication engineering has to do with the mobile internet. Of course, that's one thing, but there's much broader than this. Everything from automatic driving, right? There's communication between the vehicles here in order to coordinate driving. There is this internet things. It could also be hardware things like closer to antennas and things like that. Optical things or just math, if one's interested in that. There's also space things here. There's a company here in Gothenburg called RUAG Space who's doing some of these very cool space things. I've been there. It's up there on Boråsvägen. Yeah, that way. Thank you. And so I've been there, and they do computers, for instance, for space launch in these Ariane, the French rockets. If you remember way back, there was a rocket that exploded, right? There were many nervous people at RUAG because they did the control computer to this, right? It was not their fault. And they got back this thing, and it's in one of their monitors there. It's like a banged up computer, right? Because it's been in an exploding rocket, right? I was told that it actually booted afterwards. It's pretty good, right? So they build robust things, right? You try to send up something like that in an exploding rocket, you find that it's in atoms probably afterwards. But that's kind of cool. Yeah, so there are many things one can do in this. But if you're interested in this, I mean, come and talk to me or go to and try to figure out if this is something for you. There are jobs in many different fields and many different things one can do. Yeah, and there are specializations in this also, but I won't bore you more with that. So I guess I'm done. If you don't have any questions. No? Yeah, it's been fun. So good luck, and hope to see you around and MPCOM or in other aspects in the future. All right? So, see you.